So hopefully you're starting to get a little bit more familiar with how we use the three types of structure framework just across one time frame that we're looking at so far alone. Now, we've gone through some pretty detailed theory. Obviously, in the previous lesson, we kind of took our time going really slowly through pretty much what was just one swing range example, applying those three different types of structure to that example, right? Going through our expectations of price and sort of, the mechanical framework in which we used to manage those expectations and how to draw out and map that structure. So what I just thought I'd do is basically just do another walkthrough video here through a specific sample size of data. So starting from pretty much the start of March 2022 on the 4-hour chart on euro dollar. And the plan is to go all the way until the start of July 2022, excuse me, bringing us to the example that we just did in the previous lesson. So what I'm going to say to you guys is in a minute, pause this video, go on your own charts on euro dollar on the 4-hour chart from the start of March 2022 up to about the start of July 2022 and just apply exactly what we just did in the previous lesson. Map on your swing structure, map on your internal structure, and then obviously look at your fractal structure as well. But what I would say is don't get massively caught up in trying to label every single chalk. Kind of keep your main focus on sort of getting your swing structure mapped correctly and then looking at your internal structure and kind of just seeing the relationship between those two. Sometimes it will be a little bit messy, sometimes it will be a little bit tricky, but that's just why we have to practice. The market's not always super clean and it's not always super easy to read at times. So this is a good time to practice that now. And yeah, obviously look at fractal structure, do map it, do look for changes of character, but just try to see the scenarios in which change of character is clear and where it gives you useful information of say after an internal break of structure, it then gives you a clean change of character and then it signals the start of that internal pullback. And obviously then when it has that internal pullback, it comes into that strong internal high or that strong internal low and then gives you another change of character. That then signals the end of the internal pullback. And now you can expect price to move and target the weak internal high or low, right? So what I'm trying to get at is only kind of, for the most part, pay attention to changes of characters in those high value areas in which we are expecting price to turn, rather than scenarios say when you get like this where price is super, super choppy, right? And of course there's going to be loads of changes of characters probably within here because price is just moving sideways and choppy. So yeah, aggressive type of structure break, it's going to happen a lot. And that's where change of character isn't that useful. So before I ramble on any longer, pause this video in the next sort of 20 seconds, I'll tell you when. Go and look in your own charts and take your time. Do from March to about July. Or what you may want to do is you may just want to do 1 month's worth. Just do March, then come and watch this. And obviously pause it when I get to the end of March, and then you've got a bit more sort of feedback, and then go and attempt April and then May, so on and so forth. Do it how you want to do it, but I would recommend really having a go at doing it yourself because that will really highlight where maybe the gaps in your knowledge may be at this stage. Okay, so pause the video now and have a good go. Okay, so hopefully you've at least attempted doing March. Some of you may have done a little bit further. So I'm hoping this isn't going to take super long. I don't want this to be like a 2-hour video. So I'm going to go through it at a reasonably quick pace. So like I said, I'm not going to mark on every single chalk, but I kind of just want to drive home the main points, right? The main lessons of what we should be taking from this. So you guys from the 4-hour swing structure lesson, we mapped it together up until this point. So hopefully I don't have to spend kind of too long going through how we have swing structure at this point. It was a little bit tricky here where we had this last swing pullback, push down. We eventually got the break and closure above here, which then meant that the lowest point from where that high broke, it stayed in the same point, right? That was our swing structure. Then we had a pullback and another break. So that became our swing low. Price then took that low with one straight movement. So that became our swing high. As we can see in 2 attempts that failed to close above. So they were just liquidity grabs, which again, you'll learn later on in the course. Failed to close above, so we remained bullish, and then eventually we came down and got rid of all of these orange lines. We broke and closed below there. So that brings us to now. Like I said, as soon as we get that candle closure below the swing low, we instantly at that moment know where the swing high is. It's the highest point that broke the low after the low form. So if we want to use the box, right, to where it broke, that's the highest point. So the swing high in this case remains in the same place. So if you want, right, you can draw on your swing height there just to always keep in the back of your mind. It makes it nice and clear what swing range we are currently trading within, right? Cool. Now, in these cases, it's kind of a not unique case, but a slightly rarer case where Price initially tries to break and close below the low, but it fails to do so in its first attempt. And then eventually we do get that break and close below. But as we can see, price fails to close below sort of this kind of most recent spike. So I'm still mechanical because price has closed below the low here, the actual swing low. So we have had the boss, right? And this is the new range. But just as a little bit of extra thought, I guess, is in the live market, I do kind of also like to see price continue to break below there as well to kind of just give that true confirmation that we are going. So if this happens in the live market, where it fails to close below that spike, I still will map this as a boss, and this is still my new swing high. But just kind of as an extra talking point, yeah, I do typically like to kind of see price really commit to it, just because sometimes you can get a sweep of that low and it can continue up. But anyway, just thought I'd mention that there whilst it's here. So we have had the swing break of structure. What do we expect after a swing break of structure? We expect a swing pullback, okay? So the first little sign we can look for at least is a change of character. So we've had a bit of a fractal pullback and we've continued to the downside. So what I'm going to do in this instance is I'm just going to use a dashed line to represent where the chalk would have to occur for it to be in that instance, okay? So we can see that was the fractal pullback. This was the last candle to fail to break the previous candle's low, because all of them break the previous candle's low as it goes on, right? So that's the last fractal high. So that would be the bullish change of character, okay? So let's pray price forward a little bit. In that instance, so this looks like a bit of a tricky chalk. It looks like we took the high and the low, but let's confirm on a lower time frame. No, we took the low first and then the high. So we have had a bullish change of character there. So a bit of a messy one. So again, I'll quickly explain that. What happened in this instance is price pulled back up to here, and then this next candle, it took the low first and then it took the high. So we did actually have a bullish change of character here, but as you can see, like, it's quite corrective, right? We're kind of struggling to break these lows. It's just a chalk. We failed to close above. And this is a perfect instance in which it is a bullish change of character, because change of character is mechanical. It either is or it isn't. But what requires your human judgment is to decide, what is that going to mean for you? Is in like, are you paying much attention to this? Are you seeing that and going, okay, yeah, we're definitely going step side now. I want to buy and I'm expecting this move. Or if you're already short, is that going to, make you take all your profits and run sort of thing? In this instance, I would be like, okay, it's a bullish scenario, but we haven't really gone anywhere. We failed to break up above the high. Everything's still pretty bearish. I'd want a bit more development. I wouldn't really be that convinced either way. It's not that convincing. I want to see what happens next. Let's see. Not really going anywhere. We're just trading in between there, not doing anything. Okay, and now we continue to the downside, right? So in this case, it was just a liquidity grab to grab the orders behind the high, and we've continued down, right? So that's the type of instance where price is just a bit choppy. You don't have to pay too much notice to that bullish change of character. This would be the last candle to fail to break the previous candle's low. So this would be the current chalk line, okay? And now we continue to the downside, right? So let's keep going. I'm going to go at a reasonably quick pace here, and it just keeps dumping. So no point leaving that up there. All right, so we keep going. That's quite a decent pullback. Again, that's not a swing pullback, right? It's a couple of candles. I barely wouldn't even really call that internal structure. That's more just fractal structure. So that would be the high that I would need to see go. So this is a classic example of where we get the break of structure. We're obviously saying to ourselves, let's start to think about a swing pullback. But that doesn't mean, one, you can't keep looking for shorts or hold on to your shorts, because in some instances, right, price can be very, very impulsive, and this can happen. And then you'll see in other market environments, you can literally get the boss and then price can pull back straight away. So we never know what's going to happen. Obviously, it's the market, it can do what it wants. But there obviously will be other confluences in which we'll start to look at, in which we can anticipate when it might free fall and when it might come in. But we'll get to that at a later point, okay? So for now, it's just tanking hard. Let's see what happens next. So in this instance, I think this is another instance where it takes the low and then it takes the high. So let's have a look on the lower time frame. And we can see, so we can see here, right? This would have been the 4-hour fractal low. It pulls back, and then what happens? We come down and we take the low, right? So when we take the low, now where's the new fractal high? On the 4-hour chart, it would be up here, and then we take the high. So in one candle, we had a continuation and then the chalk on the 4-hour chart, okay? So a bit of a messy one, but this is how sometimes it can happen. So now we've had the change of character on this high here. I'm going to zoom in and give me 1 sec. Okay. So that's it here, right? We get the fractal pullback. Then in this next candle, it takes the low. So at that exact moment, right, we can then draw the fractal high here, and then price gives us a bullish change of character. So again, not the cleanest of chalks in the world. We haven't even closed above. It could just be coming into this high to roll over. So not that convincing just yet. I'd need to see a bit more sort of confluence to really be convinced, we're starting to pull back, but it is still a bullish change of character nonetheless. And obviously we're quite overextended now. So let's see what happens next and play this forward a few candles. Just chopping around, no real commitment just yet. Okay, and now we're starting to break above these highs, okay? So that's a bit more sort of positive confidence for me, and this is where you can label that as now your first sort of bullish IBOS, right? as you know, it's a lot more convincing sort of that just fractal structure. As you can see here, now prices come up, like we had the bullish change of character, a bit of a pullback here, and then continue to the upside. Okay, so yes, it's not the most prominent sort of internal structure in the world, but sometimes you won't get massive pullbacks, and it can be a little one like that, and that'll be the first indication. I go, okay, now that's a much stronger signal that we're going to get sort of this internal pullback or internal structure shifting bullish to facilitate that swing pullback, right? And then what do we look for? We look for the internal structure to shift bearish to signal the end, and then we can target the weak swing low, right? Now, in this instance, I probably wouldn't mark out my 4-hour swing low just yet, simply because although we've had a bullish IBOS, if price was then to continue to the downside, right, I wouldn't view that as significant of a swing pullback, right? Because then if we had a boss and then a break of that high, I wouldn't classify that as a 4-hour shifting bullish. That for me would just be a bullish IBOS, okay? So that's why a bullish IBOS, remember I've said this a few times now, it signals the start of the swing pullback, but it doesn't confirm we've had enough of a swing pullback yet to define it as a swing pullback, to say that that's a swing low, if that makes sense, okay? It's a bit of a subtle difference, but it is important. So that's a good sign, and now this is where I'd have a lot more confidence, right, to start to look for longs from within here to play that swing pullback, all else things considered, and you can see now price moving to the upside. You potentially could call that another IBOS. It's again not the most convincing in the world. I'd almost kind of really just view that as kind of one leg now, and then look for something like this to happen, right? Pullback, up, and then a break of that. That's kind of what you're looking for here, okay? So yeah, this would definitely be relative to recent price action enough of a sizable pullback for me to classify that as a 4-hour swing low. So I'm just going to put that as my weak swing low, right? It's weak because it's failed to break the high, and then we can put on our pretty little gray circle there, just so we know that that is swing structure, okay? So again, only going to focus on structure for now, but there's a ton of other confluence. So let's see what happened here. This is another tricky chalk situation. Did it break the high or did it break the low first? Because if it just pulled back like this and then broke the high, then it's just a continuation, right? Or if it did this, breaks the high, then that would become the low. And then if it comes back down, then it could be a bearish chalk. But let's have a look and just confirm on the lower time frame. Bit of a tricky one, but it looks like, it looks like it just pulled back first. Like we came back, right? And then we've gone up like this and it's just retraced. But I would say that would be the current low, fractal low. So let's go back. I could probably, be super accurate and check the 1 minute time frame, but it's not super important for now. And the data won't go back that far, I don't think, at the moment. So let's just say that's our fractal low, okay? Pretty sure that is. So we're having the internal pullback. After an IBOS, we're probably going to expect that internal pullback to kick in a little bit, as in, we've had the internal structure shift bullish, and then what do we look for? We look for a bearish change of character to signal the start of that internal pullback. Then we look for a bullish chalk to signal the end of the internal pullback, and then we can target the weak internal high, so on and so forth, right? But we always have to be aware in the back of our minds, swing structure is far more important, it's far more powerful, and it is bearish. So the more that we pull back, right, the higher we pull back, the more the probability increases that the pullback's about to finish, and this is going to switch bearish, and eventually one of those strong internal lows isn't going to hold, right? So let's see what happens next. Okay, now we get that bearish change of character, and now we're obviously clearly having that internal pullback, right? So we can look to potentially play shorts, because there's every possibility, right? Although this is a strong internal low, there's every possibility the pullback could be over, the swing pullback, and we could be ready to go out, right? There's always a possibility, because any longs, although you're trying to catch that internal high low, they are against the swing structure. So let's see as price comes down into these levels to see if it's going to fail or if we're going to get potentially another bullish change of character. So there's a bullish change of character here. Again, remember, chalks are the most aggressive type of structure break, and they can fail often, but it's the first signal that we have that internal pullback could now be finished, and now we could be ready to go to take out that weak internal high, right? If this is your weak internal high up here, so let's see what happens next. And there we go. See, it was a fake signal. So this is the thing, right? And this is where you're going to have to learn later in the course other confluences other than structure that will look to see where is a higher probability that this high low is likely to form. And then that's when we want to pay attention to chalk a lot more in the areas in which we expect it to happen, okay? So there we go. There's another change of character, right? Why is there a change of character? Because you see this candle fails to break the previous candle's low. So we had a pullback, then price came down and it broke that low. The exact moment it breaks that low, this becomes the new fractal high. And then we've had a change of character, right? So you can see that down, up, down, that becomes the high, and then we break it to the upside, okay? So now we've had another bullish change of character, right? Again, don't want to talk about some confidence, but as you guys know, right, some demand zones, etc. Come into here, so we can expect it's a higher probability we're going to get that change of character. And now this is where you can look for longs for price to come in and look for buys to target at least a week high if the internal structure is going to remain bullish. Okay, remember, it might not. Again, swing structure is more powerful. This could easily just chock to come into here, to come into this supply level and continue down. Okay, so these are things I want to manage your expectations. Okay, these are not magic keys to the market that's going to give you a 100% win rate. It's just the probabilistic mechanical framework that we follow, you know, for us to base trade ideas around, right? It's for us to bring a method to the madness of the markets. Okay, so we've had a bullish chock. That's our signal that the internal pullback could now be finished. We've already had a fake signal here, but this could be the one that now goes. And let's see what happens. And then we start to trade to the upside here. Okay, I'm gonna go a bit quicker. So yeah, again, you can see how here there was another bearish shock, right? So it's just depending on when you want to pay attention to those or not. That is a bearish confluence, but the likelihood scenario is we've had a pretty deep pullback into a decent level, right? Now, you know, if you kind of read between the lines, that was just a liquidity grab, fell to close below, like we're probably going to go for that high, okay? So this is where the markets can be a little bit messy at times. It can give you some fake signals with change of character, and you have to try and focus on the bigger picture, okay? And then we do get another internal breaker structure. So at that point, we've had a bullish IBOS, right? We now obviously have another strong low, so this becomes the internal low. We map internal structure the exact same way as swing structure in terms of when we get the break with the body candle closure, we look back for the lowest point that broke the high after the high was printed, okay? So you can use the box trick on this as well, drag it from the high to where it broke down, and where's the lowest point in that box, right? It's the lowest part of that pullback that becomes your new strong internal low. So now the expectation from an internal structure perspective would be what? That this low will hold, right? Price will pull back, and then we'll get another continuation of the high, right? And yeah, that's basically the framework. So I'm gonna go a little bit quicker now, and you guys will hopefully be able to read between the lines if there's any little bits I don't necessarily talk about, but we have a bearish change of character, right? Signaling the start of the internal pullback. So we'll have to see now will price come in, potentially give us a bit of change of character, and that can signal the end of the internal pullback, and then we could be ready to go. But always, and I'll keep saying this, always manage your expectations. Swing structure is king, swing structure is more important, and at any point, right, this low may fail, and we could be ready to go. So you always have to bear that in mind, okay? So we come in, zoom in a little bit so you guys can see it. Okay, so it looks like there was a bullish change of character here, a bit of a subtle one, where price came in, it pulled back, it came down, and then it took the high. So there was one there. See what happens next. We're going to come lower. Looks like we might do, maybe not. Yeah, come lower. Okay, and then we come up, and then that would be a bullish chock there. Okay, so again, a little bit messy, but you can see what's happening. Price is pulling back down and towards the strong internal low. The low holds, we sweep these lows, have a bullish change of character there to the upside, and then we're ready to try and take out this weak high. But obviously we need a candle body close, so far we do not have that. Let's see what's happening, a little bit of a pause. Do we get a break above? Yeah, and then we get a break above. Okay, cool. So now this becomes our new strong internal low here, right? But what do I always say? The deeper we start to pull back up into swing structure, although this is a strong internal low, at some point this could fail, okay? So you always have to bear that in mind. So we've had that break. Let's see if we can get a bearish change of character to signal the start of the internal pullback. And there we go. There we get it, right? Hopefully you guys can see the change of character. That was the last candle to fail to break the previous candle's low. So you can see that was the fractal pullback there, right? And then we go. So now, let's say, right, again, I don't want to talk about other confluence, but we come into a level in which we expect that potentially, remember always to zoom out and know where you are within swing structure. But let's say you have a very strong idea based on the confluence, which we haven't obviously yet introduced, but you have a strong indication that this could be where the swing lower high is likely to form. When we get that change of character, you can then look to short this, right? And you can look to target here, but you have to manage your expectations that we don't have structural confirmation of that yet. We don't have confirmation that the swing pullback is over until what? Until price closes below this low. Why is that? Well, we need a bearish IBOS, right? We need price to break below here, because what could happen is you could get short, you could be running really, really nice profit, price could come into this strong internal low, it could give you a bullish change of character, you're hell-bent on price has to take out this low now, but it doesn't, and then you take a break even or a loss, even worse, right? So that's why you have to, maybe take partial profits, all these things we'll talk about at a later date, right? But it's only once we get the break and closure below, okay, now there's a much higher probability that price is ready to take out that low, right? Cool. Now I promise I will go a lot quicker because I have spoken about all of these rules plenty of times, right? So hopefully you guys should be pretty cool with it. And as you can see here, do we get a bullish change of character? No, okay, we never get one. Okay, and that can save you from taking longs as well, because you might be happy to look for longs from in here and look for a hedge against your short or look for another leg to the upside. But this is where you go, okay, like this is, back here where we've only had the start of the pullback, you might want to be a bit more aggressive, right, in getting in the longs, because there's a higher probability that price has room to have that pullback. Remember what I said in the previous video, the deeper we have that pullback and the higher the probability that pullback is now over, it becomes lower probability to keep trying to buy these lows. This is where when price comes to revisit this level, you may want to wait for a lot more confirmation than maybe you would back here. Okay, there's just some things to think about as you get a bit more advanced with your trading, okay? But as you can see, price came in, pulled back, and then all of these candles broke the prior candles low, so there was no bullish change of character here. So this is when I would say, okay, we've had our bearish IBOS, the internal structure has realigned itself with the swing structure, and now price is ready to take out this swing low. And this is where counter trend longs become a lot lower probability, right? Because now you're buying against the internal and the swing structure. So this is where I'd say, for the most part, especially when price is pretty impulsive to the downside, you've had that corrective pullback. Now we're expecting the impulsive phase to take out this low, okay? And that's where buying against this, for the most part, I wouldn't recommend, right? It's a lot lower probability for the most part, okay? So let's see what happens next. Do we start to pull back, have a bit of an internal pullback, right? But remember what I said, once you get that bearish internal structure, realign itself with the swing structure, the expectation, right, is the bearish ranges will hold until it takes out that low. Why? Because these all become strong highs because they break the lows, right? And that's very often what you'll see, okay? So I'll just play this forward a little bit. So we have a bearish IBOS there, right? Again, not the biggest of ones, but I would still view that as a potential internal break of structure. So now there's every potential now that this high will remain protected, and we go. But even if that broke, right, and we broke above here, then I'll be going, okay, we're probably just having a bit of an internal pullback for this larger piece of price action, and then I'll be looking for that to go, signaling the end of that larger internal pullback, right? And then you'd expect those smaller internal ranges to hold until that goes, okay? So let's see what happens next. That high doesn't break, right? And then you get another little internal breaker structure here. All right, so now potentially price won't trade above this protected high because it took out the low. So let's see what happens next. And there we go, okay? Oh, we haven't got the boss just yet. Need to wait for a candle closure. And there we get it. Just about get it there, okay? So that's quite a good example actually of the previous, very similar to the previous one that we went through in the previous lesson, right? Where swing breaker structure, a few kind of, you can get, well, one fake, not fake chock there, but an early signal where fractal structure changes in character can catch you out a little bit, get a bit of a pullback there. Then we get a chock here. Again, not the most convincing, but this is where you don't have to get into long straight away. You can wait for a bit more structure. Then we get an IBOS, maybe not sure with that one. Then you get another one. Okay, now it's pretty decent. And you could even view that as one leg if you wanted. Then we get a bit of a messy change of character there to signal the start of the pullback, right, of this leg. We do get a bullish change of character here, but it ends up being a bit of a fake signal, right? Don't even close above, right? It's not the most convincing. And then we come down here, and that's a bit more of a convincing chock, right? We come into a nice demand level, and then this becomes a lot higher probability, then look for the longs to target this high, right? So on and so forth. After that, we get the bearish change of character, signals the start of this pullback, right? Bullish change of character, okay, now ready to take out the high. Bearish change of character, start of the pullback, but we've had quite a deep swing pullback now, so there's an increased probability the pullback is over and we're ready to take out the swing low, but we don't get true confirmation until we get the bearish IBOS. There was no bullish chock over here, so it can have saved you from a loss if you tried to buy from this low, right? That's where you're better off waiting for that bullish chock. That will give you a bit more confirmation if you want to try and target for another internal leg to the upside. Let's go to these lines. And then after we get that, now it's usually, for the most part, it's usually pretty impulsive to take out the low in most cases. And this is where these internal ranges hold, right, until it takes out the swing low. Cool, okay. So now we have a swing breaker structure and we have the counter body closure below. What do we know? We instantly know where the new swing high is. This one's quite easy. It's the highest point that broke the low, so it becomes this high up here. So I'm just going to move this to the downside. Cool, and then we can put our grey circle there straight away. Alrighty, so let's play fast forward a little bit and see what happens. So just kind of trading between this high and low at the moment. This is not really ideal price action. Failed to close above that high, so no kind of bullish IBOS there, but definitely a change of character, a bullish chock. So we could look for longs from within here, but I'd be skeptical that price hasn't closed above it, right? So it's not a very good sign. This doesn't become a strong internal low until we get that closure above. So this could just be a liquidity grab to go below. But you could also look for longs. You just have to understand it's not super high probability just yet. It's a quite tricky price action to read in the moment in the live market. There we go. The trend continues, and then we get another breaker structure there. So I would say that's a pretty sizable pullback compared to, whoops, I should have changed that to a boss there. Pretty sizable pullback compared to recent price action, so I'd be pretty happy to call that a swing breaker structure. Okay, so we can put our circle there. This becomes our new strong high. Okay, so what do we expect after a breaker structure? We expect a swing pullback. Kind of falling pretty hard at the moment. This would be the chalk line, right? This was the last candle to fail to break the previous candle's low, so that would be our chalk level. So let's see what happens here. Get another movement down, so then we can move our chalk level here. Okay, and then all of those candles, I think, break the previous candle's low. Yes, that's all down one move. Okay, and then we get a fractal pullback there, and then that would be the high. Okay, and then we just continue down. So obviously the trend's pretty strong at the moment, and then we get a bullish change of character here. Okay, considering how sort of oversold we are at this point, and it's quite a strong candle. I haven't really closed above, but I would say it's a pretty good sign. We may be starting to see at least an internal pullback here, obviously with a change of character. Let's see what happens. Don't get the closure above, so it could be liquidity sweep, but this could be your first sort of, if you're a bit more on the aggressive side, you can look for longs from within here, right? Obviously that caused a change of character, and you can look to try and play that move. So let's see how this plays out. Or is the trend going to be too strong? Let's see. Just kind of chopping sideways here. Do we get a bullish IBOS? Yes, there we do. So this for them could be the start. Now a bit more confirmation that you're getting the start of that swing pullback for our IBOS. Okay. Yeah, so that's the start of the swing pullback. I'd probably say it's quite sizable now to classify that as a swing low as well. So now I can draw on my weak swing structure. Okay, cool. So now the expectation, right, would be that price will come in here and potentially the strong internal low will hold, and then we can get that deeper pullback. So let's see what happens. We get a change of character there. Again, you see that? Price pulls back, then takes the high, then takes the low. Let's just double check on the lower time frame that it did happen in that order. Yes, it did. You can see here, right? That's the high. So price pulls back, then it takes the high, then it takes the low. So there's your bearish chalk. Signals at least an internal pullback. There's always a potential, right? Like I always say, there's always a potential, because swing structure is more key, that could be the move that takes out the low, but we don't have confirmation of that until we get a break of the internal low there. So there's always a possibility this strong internal low can hold, right? And we could get that deeper swing pullback. Looks like it might be holding. Don't get closed below, so it could be a sweep. Let's see. Quite choppy price action is. If you look at this, right, we're just moving sideways and sweeping highs and lows. So this would be pretty tricky to trade this. This way you can get kind of swept out a lot. You just have to recognize your range bound. There's no clear intentions. And this is where you may want to be patient, right? And wait for clear intentions. Now we have clear intentions. We get the bearish IBOS and the bearish swing boss all in one go with that candle. And now you have something a lot clearer to work with. We now know where our swing high is, right? We can move this down to here. This becomes our swing high. Cool. So let's play this forward. Price continues to move to the downside. Then we get the fractal pullback. Then we take that low, which means this would be where the chalk line would be. Okay. And then do we get a break and close above? Yes, we do, but we also get a chalk. So I kind of classify that as, actually, excuse me, did I get that right? Yeah, I did. So that would be a chalk. It's kind of like an IBOS as well for me. So I kind of view those as the same, right? You've essentially had, a bit of a pullback here. All right, so that's a pretty good sign now. I'd be looking for this as like your protected strong internal low, and I'd be looking for a movement like that and see if we can get that. Okay, and you see that continued movement. So we come to the upside now, we're really starting to pull back, but we're coming in towards the strong internal high. So we expect that high to hold, okay? So from an internal structure perspective, all right, we've had that movement. You can look for price to come back in, all right? But remember, it's only when we get the break of the low that you get the confirmation of the swing pullback ending, where we can then target the weak low. Otherwise, if these lows can keep holding, right, you can anticipate a potential trend change as long as those lows hold. But the deeper we get that pullback into the strong high, the higher the probability that this strong low may fail, and then we may get that bearish IBOS, right? It's the same framework again and again and again. So hopefully it's really starting to sink in now. So then Appreciate I'm going a bit quick here, but we got a bearish change of character there. All right, so that's your first signal, early signal that potentially the swing lower high may be forming, and we may be ready to go to take out the weak swing low, which I can definitely now mark on down here, right? But as you guys should know, change of character only signals the start and end of internal pullbacks. So we don't have true confirmation yet that the swing pullback is over. So when we see this bearish change of character, our expectation really can only be that it may be an internal pullback like into some of these levels, some nice demand zones, right? And then if you've got a bullish change of character, that will then give you kind of that decent confirmation that internal pullback may be finished and we may be ready to target that high, okay? Not a guarantee, but just the signal and the framework that we use. So let's see. Don't get a bullish change of character until up here, but then we continue that movement. So this would be your bullish chalk, okay, for the avoidance of doubt. That's where that would be. But you can now clearly see, right, that's a definite internal breaker structure to the upside, right? So when you get that IBOS, what I'd very often recommend you do, especially when you kind of have clear structure like this, is you can kind of map out where your strong low is. Obviously, you don't know where the high is until we start to pull back, but that's where it would be, right? So now when price is pulling back, it could just be to pull into the strong low. Let's see what happens, and then we continue the movement. And then we get a closure above, okay? So this is where we now have a swing trend change. But you see how the internal structure gave you an indication that that may happen because it never shifted bearish. Once we got that bullish, we pulled back, we got bullish. We can only confirm the swing pullback is over when this low goes. It never goes, price pulled back, right? The strong internal low hold, and then we continued up, and we had a bullish IBOS and BOS in one candle. Okay, so now we have a bullish trend change. So the 4-hour chart is now confirmed bullish. So let's see what happens. All right, and now this weak low now becomes a strong low, right? Cool. So we continue to the upside. That's just a fractal pullback. Again, another just a fractal pullback. So this would be where the chalk would be, right? So now we have a bearish change of character, okay? So that's the first indication we're getting at least an internal pullback, right? Let's see what happens. But we continue to the upside, okay? So that for me would be a bullish IBOS, right? A continuation of the move. Now, some of you may kind of view that as a swing pullback. I think relative to recent price action, it's not that convincing. But I'll talk about this in a bit of a later date. I think I'll probably do a whole lesson on this about, you know, whether you want to be someone who's a bit more, let's call it aggressive with your swing structure mapping, like where you view these smaller ranges, or if you're a bit more conservative. And actually, I'll explain to you how it doesn't really make a difference when you have a good understanding of how to read internal structure and multi-time frame analysis, okay? But I'll leave that for a bit of a later date. So for now, kind of just stick with me. Some of you may have viewed that as a swing pullback, and that's absolutely fine. Don't worry. You just kind of have to manage your expectations that if you view smaller pullbacks as swing structure, the trend may just change a little bit more often for you, okay? That's it, right? So for me, that would just be a continuation of the bullish internal structure. So for me, this would become a strong internal low. Okay, so there's every possibility now that price could just pull back into this internal low and we could continue to the upside, but I'm very wary that we've had a swing break of structure. So at any point we could be expecting that deeper swing pullback, right? And that's the view I would take with that. So let's see what happens here. A bit of a small pullback, but not really as convincing. It's more of a fractal pullback there. So I would still view this as my strong internal low. There's your change of character, as that was the last candle to fail to break the previous candle's high after that high went. So now we've got a bearish chalk, okay? So let's see if this internal low can hold or not. And we get a break and close below, okay? So now the internal structure is bearish. So now this becomes our strong internal high, okay? And the expectation would be what? That the internal structure will remain bearish to facilitate that swing pullback. And if this low is gonna go, then in theory, these highs should all stay protected until that goes, if we're going to strip bearish. Otherwise, you'd look for the bullish IBOS, right? And that would be the end of the internal pullback, or the swing pullback, I should say, and then we can target the swing high. So let's see what happens. So the expectation should be that this high should not now be breached because it took out the strong internal low. So we get a bullish chalk. Again, I'm not going to map these all out because we'll be here all day. Price action is pretty indecisive here. So again, this would be another environment where, could be a bit tricky to trade, may take a few losses in here if you keep forcing things. So sometimes when the intentions aren't super clear, you have to be a little bit careful, end up sweeping those highs, coming up into some extreme supply, grabbing the liquidity, breaking move to the downside. Again, I'm dropping some terms there that you may not be familiar with yet. if this is the first time going through the course, but don't not worry. So we get another continuation of that move, right? So now this becomes our new strong internal high because it's the highest point that took this low after the low was printed. Again, just looking to play that swing pullback. Bit of a steeper move here now, coming strongly into this low. So remember, from a swing structure perspective, if you've mapped it the way I have, right? I mean, again, some of you may have mapped this as your swing structure. So if you did, the swing structure would be bearish for you, and that's absolutely fine, okay? Again, I'll get into this later lesson. Don't worry about it. So we're coming into this low, and we're expecting the swing low to hold. We've had a bullish change of character now, I believe, because I think it took the low, then the high. Let's double check. Yeah. We pull back, took the low, and then took the high, right? So we've had a bullish change of character there. I'm going to kind of do this a little bit quicker. I know I keep saying that, but I do want to cover everything. So we have had a bullish chalk. I won't draw on just for the sake of time. So now I'd be expecting, okay, swing structure is bullish, but the internal structure is still bearish. So I am expecting a swing high low to form, but I appreciate that this is heavily bearish, a lot of momentum. So I'd be a bit cautious, right? Because what can happen is you could get a bullish chalk and we can look for longs, but I would be thinking this could just be an internal pullback for this high, right? Just because, especially with how much momentum there is here. So I'd be cautious, okay? Because you don't have confirmation that the swing pullback is over until you get a bullish IBOS, right? So these are one of those instances where you need to just be a little bit careful when managing your expectations if you get long of how far price is likely to go. And obviously we've only had a very, very aggressive chalk within here, right? So this might fail, it might not. And there we go. And then we get another movement up, right? But this is the strong internal high. So let's see what happens. We get a bit of an internal pullback and then we continue the downside. Do we close below? Yes, we do. So then this becomes our new bearish IBOS, right? So now we need to see this high go to get a bullish IBOS to signal the end of the swing pullback. Is the swing low going to hold? Yes, it is. And we get a bullish IBOS, okay? So now this would be a pretty good indication that the swing low is going to hold. And now we'd expect what? We'd expect the bullish internal ranges to hold until it takes out the weak swing high. Sorry, I should have put that on there by now. We've definitely had a swing pullback. And then we can draw this one here, all right? Cool, that's our weak high. So now the internal structure is bullish. This becomes our strong internal low. So now we can look for longs from within here to try and target up to the weak high. So let's see what happens. Price pulls back, comes into our nice level. We can look for longs and try and at least target this high with the potential we could go even further. So let's see if we can get another bullish IBOS. Okay, I'm not going to draw on all the changes of characters. We don't get closure above, so not confirmed just yet. It goes above. Nope. So it's not looking too good just yet. Don't fail to close again. Bearish change of character here. Okay. So pretty good sign that this low could be weak, right? But we could just come down deeper into this range and then push up to the upside. So it's not looking good for these lows because they're failing to take out these highs. So probably expect these lows are going to go now. But what could happen is it could just take out these lows, right? Price could pull back into our strong internal low because this is the internal high and this is the strong internal low. It could come into here, give us a change of character, and then we could be ready to go, right? But it's not looking too good overall. Also something, it's a bit more discretionary, but I always say the characteristics, the nature of price action. See how impulsive this is? This is kind of quite corrective. So, but yeah, let's just stick to the framework and see what happens. So as we come down into this low, we do get a bullish change of character. Okay, so maybe this low is going to hold, right? That's a nice sign that potentially now we could be looking for longs to take out this high and ends up failing, okay? So yeah, bit of a tricky one that, but this is a perfect example of where we're always trading with probabilities. Sometimes we get fake signals. It is what it is, okay? But as you'll see, as we bring in more confluence, especially multi-time frame analysis, you can sometimes anticipate when strong structure on one time frame is going to fail because it can be weak structure on another time frame, okay? But don't worry too much about that just yet. So we get the 4-hour swing breaker structure here. So now the 4-hour trend has switched bearish, okay? So that was a bit of a tricky one. Where is our swing high? Well, as you guys should know, if you're ever confused, draw it from the swing low to where it was broken and then drag it up and look for the highest point. It stays in the same place, but this becomes our strong swing structure. Awesome, so that brings us to the start of July, which is the time period I said we would do because that's where we did a big example in the previous lessons. There's no point in kind of really going over that again. So yeah, so hopefully you kind of attempted this before I went through it. Look back at your analysis and kind of what you thought. then, especially if you're not using mechanical rules to define a swing pullback, right? There may be some instances where, like I said, you may have viewed this section here as swing structure, but it doesn't make a big difference. The things I want you to really concentrate on are like the mechanical bits. So understanding like why a high or low is weak or strong, how to pick, where the high or where the strong high or low is, because remember, when it's bullish, it would always be the lowest point that took out the high, right? There's no discussion involved with that. Things like that, make sure you have those nailed down properly. And also really starting to think about like, how to interpret the breaks of structure and what they all mean, like the relationship between internal and swing. So, when we get that swing break of structure, we get a bullish change of character. The fractal structure shifts bullish. Yes, that's the first indication we may be pulling back. But as we've seen, there's plenty of cases where that can give us like fake signals, where we got a bullish change of character over here, but it was just a fake signal, right? And it's when we get the kind of more convincing internal structures, okay, now, right, this is a lot more significant that we're probably going to take out that high. But then obviously the deeper we get those pullbacks, then these bearish changes of characters of here, yes, although that chalk only signals an internal pullback and this low could hold, it's lower probability now that the internal structure will remain bullish. Why? Because we've had a deeper pullback. And that's where potentially you can think about, in the future, as we bring in more concepts, where we can look for longs from within here, anticipating that this low is going to go. And then obviously then we expect the ranges to remain bearish until it does its job, until it takes out the low. Like they're the things I want you to be thinking about at the moment. Obviously, as we start to bring in more concepts and more layers to this, it can obviously get a little bit more complicated. So, we want to make sure that you're very, very, very comfortable with these concepts on one time frame before we start to bring in everything else. So without further ado, hope you guys took some value from that, and I'll see you in the next one.